All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of HansenAthletics Radio. Today we got Dade on. Super excited to talk to him today about youth athletes, a little bit about coaching, and even parent involvement with coaching. All right, so I got the opportunity to meet Dade out in Dallas when we were out there for Universal Speed Rating Summit. And one thing I found out about him quickly is he's very fast. So if you listen to this podcast, you might get faster just by listening. But I'll turn it over to Dade. He can kind of introduce himself a little bit, talk a little bit about his background and what he does now.
All right. What's up, guys? I'm Dade. I own a business called Dieterich's Advanced Performance. We are faith-driven performance, so we keep God at the center of everything. Started business probably about 2 years ago, and then just started the Speed Lab, I don't know, probably about 6-7 months ago. Maybe a little bit further back than that, maybe closer to 8 or 9. But, I mean, ever since joining the Speed Lab community with guys like Darren, everything has just been going in the upward trend. Business is, I guess, booming now. I've kind of been in different communities. I've worked with special needs. I've worked with general population. I'm actually running my business out of a CrossFit gym right now. So I've kind of got a wide array of fitness experience. And I think what's been setting me apart now has been the speed aspect of things. I don't think anyone in Louisiana kind of does what we've been doing with the Speed Labs. And so I'm excited to kind of get down to the nitty gritty and talk about, kind of anything that comes up. So what's up, man?
Sweet. Awesome. And I wanted to highlight, going through this as I'm reading what you put down, you definitely have, a diverse background. Tell me a little bit. So athletes that I trained would and parents would know of IMG Academy. Tell me a little bit about your time there.
So it was very short. So I went through the interview process and was going to be one of the summer interns fresh out of college. When I went there, I was out there for about 3 weeks, and they have a no nepotism policy. And I was actually related to Dr. Taryn Morgan, who is the vice president of the performance department. Now, granted, there was no communication between us prior to. I'm like, hey, I didn't even tell her I was going to interview. So I kind of went through the process. When I got down there, they were, I guess, going through some human resource changes. So I was out there for about 3 weeks, and they were like, oh, you're related to her? Well, we don't allow that. So yeah. So, I mean, I put it on a resume. It looks good, but, it was very short. But being that I am related to her, I've had a lot of opportunities to go down there, and I've shadowed coaches like Mo Wells. I've talked to the therapist, the psychologist. So I've been around IMG probably about 4 or 5 times, 2-3 weeks at a time. So I mean, if you look at it on a calendar, it's probably about 3 or 4 months that I've actually spent at IMG, and I've gotten to watch it grow a lot over the last 15 years. So it's pretty cool, man.
That's awesome. And then you mentioned special needs, and then it looks like you were a coach at a CrossFit affiliate, obviously, because you're still inside of one.
Yep.
What kind of my question for you is, because I also coached at a CrossFit when I was young. What kind of opened your eyes to? I mean, you didn't go down the route of saying, okay, my athletes need to do CrossFit per se, like the methodology of CrossFit. What kind of led you to that discovery or decision in your own coaching?
As far as getting to CrossFit.
Yeah, or just you have an athlete come in and, you talk about speed development, right? CrossFit doesn't do a lot of speed development.
No.
So what kind of, some people buy into that and they're training athletes with just purely CrossFit.
Yeah, no, I tell my kids, hey, if CrossFit is something that you want to experience, hey, come get you a CrossFit membership and do the classes. But at the same time, these are the qualities that are important for your sport. But I do tell them that the idea of CrossFit and the general fitness component, hey, if you're in the off season, and especially for higher level guys, I'm not going to say come and do bar muscle ups and the crazy skills that CrossFit does. But if you're just coming to get away from the training sessions and you just want to do some general fitness, it's a cool place to be at. The community's good. I like the competition aspect of it too. Every workout is timed. Every workout has a score. So, you can put yourself up on a leaderboard. So it does keep that kind of competitive bug alive, even when you're away from games and sports. So I don't make my kids do it, especially the younger kids. But if they want to do something cool, we try to get bar muscle ups. We try to, we're working on pull-ups and things like that. We do handstands and a lot of things that are kind of derived from that CrossFit methodology. We try to implement into our warm-ups and just kind of throw in some wrenches here and there.
Cool.
So yeah. I like having some of those people especially I got like older guys that will be around doing some CrossFit workouts, and they'll come mess with the kids and like, hey, why don't you try this, and so it's always fun just to kind of be around the community.
For sure. That's awesome. And that leads us into one of the topics that you mentioned that you could speak about, and that's doing more with less. Can you expand into that in terms of what your mind goes down when you think about doing more with less with your
More
athletes?
with less. So, I mean, I very much am a fanboy of like Tony Holler and like the simplicity of what he teaches. And it's sprint, it's jump, it's bounce. And there's not a whole lot that needs to be done as far as like specialization of exercises, especially when you're working with, 8 to 18-year-olds. I get parents all the time asking me, well, what does my kid need to be doing on this day, this day? I was like, well, did he jump? Yep. Okay, cool. Check that box. Did he sprint? Yep. Okay, then that's cool. Then just let them recover. I got a lot of kids that come in and they're so fatigued from doing their football workouts or their track workouts. And it's like, there's not much else that I'm going to be able to help you with. So let's focus on how to recover. Like we go through breathing circuits where we're laying on the ground, hands on the belly, and we're just breathing. I think simple is better because, we talk about stimulus. What's the stimulus of the day? How quickly can we get to that stimulus? And then the rest is pretty simple. Like kids, I think coaches get lost in like building toughness. I think one thing I've heard Tony Holler say is toughness is task specific, and I completely agree with it. It's like a kid will be tough if he wants to, based on the task that you give him, and I very much believe like I'd rather one perfect rep than 10 crappy reps. So I think simplicity is the key to not just training but life in general. Like if you overcomplicate a lot of things, then you just kind of get lost in the actual mission. So the stimulus is key, and if you keep that at the center, then you can accomplish a lot by just focusing on that one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it hits a nail on the head of some education stuff that we try to put out, and it's that same with the less is more, right? So if we can I like how you talked about if we can hit that stimulus, if we can cause an adaptation and improvement, ideally that's with the least amount of work possible. So the more effectively we can, stimulate that response, do less reps, send them home to recover, come back, start fresh, do it again. Over time, that's going to get, better results from our experience and from what a lot of smart people talk about versus trying to add volume, or, even trying to do your favorite college player's workout or professional player workout you see. And what's interesting about that is, when you really get an inside look at what the professionals are doing, despite what you see on Instagram, it's actually a lot of the basics and it's not a lot of volume, right? So a lot of athletes we work with that are doing club sports and school sports and school weights and us, they're doing more than professional athletes are doing.
Correct.
And these professional athletes are spending a lot more time recovering, which really is that missing key, I think, for a lot of kids, is being able to be comfortable with doing less and prioritizing and putting effort into recovery, nutrition, sleep, so that they can maximize the work that they're actually doing. So one thing we talk about in our assessment is, you might be willing, because we get some motivated kids in here. I'm like, you might be willing to lay down 40 hours of your time a week working on sports, skill development, coming in the gym, whatnot. And I'm like, if you're not eating, you're not sleeping, you're not working on recovery, let's just pretend you benefit from 20 of those hours. So you made progress on 20 hours and you basically just wasted your time for 20 hours, right?
Yep.
You just made it harder to recover. So, if you're going to get to the point where you're putting in that much work and you want to play 3 sports at once, there's a high cost when it comes to what you're doing with your other time outside of that.
Yeah.
Right. Do you see that with some of your athletes?
Yeah, definitely. They come in burn out, and I'm like, hey, if all you can give me is effort on a couple of reps, then do that. We don't need to keep pushing the needle. I don't need you to prove that you're tough today. Like, I know you're tough because you showed up here after soccer practice and then your weights and then whatever else you had going on. But like, just go stand on the side today. Just watch, get some mental reps, like let that be your workout today. And if you're feeling good, you're feeling fresh, and there's something that you see that you're like, oh, I didn't do that this week, then hop in. I think my kind of part of the philosophy is I like to make things fun enough to where making the kids sit out hurts them more than like punish work, so like,
for sure,
like just sit out, man. You're good. You don't have to prove anything to me. Doing more is hurting you more than it's helping you. this is the stimulus. If your first rep or second rep isn't hitting that stimulus, then like let's just shut it down. You're going in the wrong direction. So
Yeah. I love that. I think another thing I like about, with Tony is like people think, okay, it's pretty wide. It's getting more popular, wide known that athletes need to be fast, right? Like sports trending towards fast. We need to put effort into that bucket. And like in my town, I'm in Idaho, and it's probably a little bit behind on that. Like I don't think there's really a lot of people emphasizing speed even on the training side, but definitely not in the sport side at practice. And the interesting thing is like people might think, man, that's going to take, I don't have enough time. That's going to take an hour, hour and a half. Right. The cool thing about speed is it's one of the best qualities you can develop. But number two, it really probably takes the least amount of time if you do it effectively to get the right, intensity of reps. The dosage is super low. And Tony's famous for his atomic speed workout. It's like in 15 minutes at the start of practice, we could effectively get your athletes faster over time and ideally cut out all the conditioning at the end. So your practices are shorter. They're able to stay, mentally clearer throughout the practice because it's not 3 hours long. It's an hour and a half, and they get faster and they have more fun. So definitely on that same page when it comes to that. Is there anything else in terms of simplicity and like your athletes' development that you want to speak to, like an idea of some of the movements you guys do or you focus on the strength side and what that looks like?
from the strength side of things, I mean, we deadlift, trap bar deadlift, and I set like the speed threshold. I'm fortunate to have the output stuff, so speed threshold, keep it above this. Once you start dipping below that, we're done. Same thing with front squats. Same thing with we do bench press, we do chin ups. Now chin ups we do a 3 set max, so like you get as many chin ups as you can in 3 sets, and we do that once a month. During the month, we're doing other pulling exercises that are going to benefit it, and then we return back to that. I mean, besides those 4 lifts, trap bar, front squat, chin ups, bench press, we're doing everything else that's body weight. Wednesdays are our upper body days. It's kind of the day that we do agility and conditioning. And conditioning, I use that term loosely. We're just getting them a little bit out of breath while they're playing games and competing and stuff. But other than that, I mean, we like to do a lot of hand to ground crawling and cartwheeling. And I mean,
Yeah.
the stimulus is simple.
Like movement development.
Yeah. We, if a kid can't do a movement, we'll sit there and wait till he can. Like practice kicking up to a wall to a handstand, or let's try a cartwheel. You can't do a cartwheel. All right, let's figure it out. I feel like some things like that, like rolling on the ground, is so important. Teaching kids how to fall, teaching kids how to get up quickly, and just putting their brain and spine in different positions to where it's like it's okay to be here. But I mean, other than that, it's dumb simple. Like sometimes, like I know it's uncomfortable as an outside coach look in of like, oh, this guy doesn't do much. We do a lot of different things, but it's so simple in like the principle of why we're doing it. And I always tell athletes, like, I'm a simple coach. I don't give a whole lot of cues on do this, spine up, that, all these things. It's here's A, here's B. Let's figure out how to connect A to B. And I tell them all the time, part of being an athlete is solving the problems. So let's not get frustrated. The first step is failing at something and then figuring out what you got to do better. Yeah. And so like yesterday, I had a kid, we were working on I do a lot of Tony Villani progressions too for game speed and agility. We were practicing break, plant, separate yesterday, and I gave him 3 kind of layers to a drill. First was just standing in place, then it was like 3 steps, and then it was like, okay, let's add a little bit of speed to it. Well, the kid got step 1, step 2, we go to step 3, and he can't figure it out. So I was like, well, let's just go back to step 2. You work on step 2, they'll work on step 3, and you're going to figure it out. He ended up doing better whenever we actually put the lasers up when we did times and things like that, just because I try to not complicate it. Simple cues, give them about 5-10 minutes to figure it out. If they don't figure it out, then it's like, okay, let's move on. It's not happening today. It's cool to fail. Let's figure it out next time. And so as far as like lifting and strength, it's kind of the same thing. Figure out where you need to be at for the day. Let's hit your sets. Let's get your stimulus in. And let's get you out the door. So.
Love it. I think, you hit on a lot of things in there that I want to talk about. So number one, kind of where you finished at is, I think it's important for coaches to not make athletes reliant on the coach. Like there's a lot of coaches that try to make the athlete feel like they can't do this stuff without the coach. And I think it's important that that long-term development piece is like these athletes could step out of my facility as seniors in high school. And, if they go play college sport, obviously they'll have guidance, but let's say they don't, and they go to a college and they just want to do club sport, or they're on their own in some shape or form, they can continue to train in a way that's advantageous to staying athletic for the rest of their lives without, me standing there telling them exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Creating autonomy, I think, is huge. I like the idea. In some of my presentations, I talk about chunking, and that's kind of the concept you talked about, like giving an athlete an A to B, like starting with A, letting them figure it out. Then it's A to B, letting them figure out how to connect those two, A, B to C. So just breaking down movements to where they can piece them together to make those more complex movements, but not having to sit there and try to give it all to them at once and say, here's 15 different cues, when really an athlete often struggles with one cue, right? So I like that part about it a lot too, and having that athlete explore, how do I connect these movements? Because out on the field, when they have to connect those movements to create a play or win the championship, you're not sitting there telling them exactly what to do the whole time.
Correct.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I'm
really
telling
like that.
think here. I say think here. So when you go do whatever you got to do and it's actually on the line, you don't have to think. Do your thinking here, then do your rep. And then we're not thinking while we're doing our reps either. It's like think first, do it, and then figure out if you did it right or wrong. Figure out what you got to do to get it right if you did it wrong. So yeah, a lot of it's problem solving, man. Throwing problems at them. I'm not the coach to like. I don't want to give kids things that they can't do. I want to give kids things that they think they can't do,
Yeah.
and so that I know you can do this. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. When it comes to, you talked about kind of some challenges you do with your chin-ups. I was curious, do you, in terms of your like just traditional heavy strength work, do you max your athletes, or do you work different rep ranges, or tell me a little bit about that?
Nope. Trap bar deadlift, sets of 3. For speed, I'll set a different threshold. So pretty much the first, I want to say last month, we did keep it above 0.7. And then for as far as the mean velocity of the set, keep it above 0.7. And then next week, keep it above 0.8. Next week, keep it above 0.9. Hopefully they were doing the same weights or even moving heavier faster. I was really kind of doing that to depict the picture to them that like, hey, you don't have to put more weight on every week. Let's do something different. Let's move it faster instead. And then this month, or I say February, that was in January. February, we did staggered stance, sets of 2 on each leg, and they're all moving those loose 3-rep maxes that they were doing last month. They're moving them just as fast as they were the month prior when they were doing regular. Front squats, it's always, I like the CrossFit terminology of like building to a heavy. So build to a heavy 5 is what we do for front squat. 5 reps on front squat. I feel like that's a good number to get stronger. Now, when I use front squats, it's not a speed thing. So it's pure strength. So that's closer to a 35.4 meters per second threshold that I'm looking for. Once they start dipping below that, it's like, okay, you're done for the day. Bench press, same thing, heavy 5. And then chin ups. I take that total number of their 3 sets, and we're trying to get somewhere as close to that whenever we're doing things like last night we retested. I had a kid who did 26 reps last month. He did 27 last night, but I gave him a strategy on how to do it because he's tried to hit that number again. And it's like, okay, you're burning out in your first set. So like, let's save some in the tank on his first set so that you can go a little bit harder. And it's teaching kids that too. It's like, just because we say as many as possible, when there's an overall goal of 3 sets, you don't want to try to get all of it done in that one set. Figure out a plan. Like, let's have a strategy to how we can improve it. Last month, we focused on mixed grip. We just did all mixed grip. And then yesterday, we did chin ups. We had a kid hit 7 rep PR. So it's like, cool, something worked.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, we do like single leg squats, kettlebell swings, a lot of hip flexor stuff. I felt like hip flexors are very underdeveloped. I look at like big sprinters. They have really big psoas muscles, and it's like, all right, y'all need these. So
I love that. I think. Oh, go ahead.
I really don't play around with like a whole bunch of rep ranges. I want the kids to come in and know what we're doing and be really good at it. Because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that there's no barbells on the football field. There's no barbells on the soccer field. And trust, I was in college and I got lost in that stuff. And I became the strongest guy in the receiver room, and it didn't benefit me much. So it's like, don't do what I did. So,
Yeah, I think we all know the weight room warriors is what we'd call them, is the guys that, were insane in the weight room, just like lifting the biggest weight, looked
Mm-hmm.
good all off season, and then they never saw the field. So it's
Yep, I was there,
strength.
bro.
Yeah, strength is never a weakness, but I think at a certain point, it's like, what buckets are we filling? If you're strong enough, man, you're strong enough, right? And a lot of times you talk about underdeveloped, right? And a lot of times hip flexors, posterior chain, hamstrings, like it's because kids are not sprinting. So it's like, okay, if we introduce sprinting, build that up over time, and then have some accessory work that works on those, that'll naturally develop those. And I think a lot of kids, at least out of what I've seen, like let's say I've done 1,000 assessments in the last, 8 years, it's like a lot of kids don't know how to sprint and use their muscles or use their body correctly when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to creating force. So they've kind of taken this walk pattern, this heel to toe pattern, and never been taught how to sprint or what positions to be in, and they've just done their best to adapt the walking pattern to a run, which is, reaching out in front of the body, hitting the hill, pulling through, just positions that you really don't want to see when somebody's moving fast. And yeah, so it's all kind of like there's this wheel of like putting it all together, and then understanding, you know doing sprints as well is going to help your athletes in the weight room. Like it's all just
Yeah,
this
yeah.
cohesive thing. I wanted to touch a little bit more on, because we use bar speed and no one else in town really uses it. And, we try to talk and educate about it. So when parents listen to this, I like to talk about it a little bit. Obviously intent, like you talked about, giving them a measurement to hit for that day. Is there any other things particularly that you like about using bar speed?
I think just the fact that I can get a kid in on the first day and just know where he's at. I can put some weight
Yeah.
on him with the lifts that we like and just get a good gauge and reading on how he moves. But, just starting to build out their profile of like, okay, this kid's a heavy, like he's a better squatter than he is a deadlifter, and trying to figure out which buckets I'm kind of putting them in. And if they do have homework or things that I'm telling them they need to do more of, I can kind of start to categorize them that way. Because I mean, my strongest guys are not my fastest guys. That's for sure. So it's like, I'd rather you trap bar deadlift this weight faster than you put more weight on the bar and, move it kind of retarded like. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
it just gives me a good gauge, and it, like, I think as far as like assessing and profiling, it's something that we can do on day one that we have confidence in because there's numbers and it's not based on a coach's eye, you know.
Yeah. I like that. And one thing I like about it, I'll add to that, is kind of this term of fluid periodization. So when I have athletes that are in season or they're playing multiple sports, like a lot goes on outside of my facility, and I maybe get them 2 to 3 hours a week. And I need to gauge, every day when they come in, how recovered they are. Are they sleeping? Are they doing all these little things, and did they just get crushed at track? Like we just had people that just started
Mhm.
track and they're getting crushed.
Mhm.
So having those bar speed metrics instead of like a percentage to lift, okay, we're going, 0.7 meters per second today. It gives my athletes this ability to fluidly move between, if I have an athlete that's under recovered, right? They're going to be doing lighter weight because they have to hit that number. And it's not like this ego shot. It's not, because we're not focusing on like, oh, you were supposed to hit 85% today, but we dropped down to 65%. It's
Mhm.
just like, this is the weight that I could move this fast
Mhm.
today. And then if
Mhm.
you have an athlete come in that's just having the day of the year and they're feeling great, they might hit a freaking PR on a 2-3 rep 0.7 meter per second. So it's like, you just give athletes the ability to move
Mhm.
and fluidly between like where they're at that day, and just maximize the output that you can get for that day and not drive them into a further hole by coming into your facility. And I think that builds trust over time with the
Mhm.
athletes too. Like, man, I can go in at Hansen Athletics, and when I don't feel good, and I'm going to walk out feeling better, not worse. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
that's,
that's what
that's one reason I love it.
that's big. Yeah, that's big. I tell kids, hey, look, we're not here to get you tired. We're here to get you better. So if there's days where you are tired when you come in the door, don't expect to be more tired when you leave.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to work with it. That's the reason why we do the numbers that we do. If you're feeling 50%, then 50% effort is what you got, then let's do it. If that's the
Yeah.
difference between you moving 205 and you moving 155, then shoot, let's move 155. Let's hit the stimulus. You'll feel good tomorrow, hopefully, if you recover well. But like, I'm not adding to the hurt. So just numbers are big, man, and they don't lie. So
Yeah, and teaching them that doesn't mean you're soft. That just means you're intelligent, right? Like, because they get stuff from, if they come in and they're like at a 50%, and you're like, well, you're weak because you can't come in and you're not mentally tough, right?
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, let's be smart about it.
Correct. Correct. And I feel like as much, I don't want to say setting up for failure, like giving them those tasks that like I know they're not gonna get right away. I feel like when it comes, they have to have that balance of like in the weight room, you're not gonna fail. There's no failing in the weight room.
Yeah.
I'd rather you fail when you're trying to figure out a skill, but in here you need to feel good and confident about moving the weights, moving around the weight room, and by having percentages, it's like, oh, I didn't hit that today. I feel like a failure. It's like, no, like you're good. We know where your effort's at. We know where your head's at. Like it's good. Let's
Yeah.
get this done. It's just a piece,
Yep. And I think number one rule, for strength coaches should always be, especially on the weight room side, and sprinting, is do no harm, right? So meet the athlete where they're at. They should not walk out your door injured or, worse than they were when they walked in. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So every episode we talk about we're here to help coaches and parents. So in your mind, you shared a couple different messages for the parents and the athletes. The first one was to the parents: let the coaches do what the coaches do. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Nobody get offended, but like, hey, we get paid the little that we get paid to do what we're good at, what we're passionate about, what we spend our time, efforts, and everything, educating ourselves on. And you always get those parents that are, well, my son needs this, my son needs this, and it's like, no, they don't. It's like from a business owner client standpoint, it's like, okay, I hear you and I understand, and I think the hardest part is like communicating to parents of like what they actually need, because you got a kid that comes from soccer lessons, soccer practice, and then track and all this, and it's like, well, they need this, and it's like, okay, do you think after all of that that's what they need? And I don't know, I think you step on parents' toes sometimes with some of those things. To the parents, man, y'all just, hey, take a breath. Let us do what we like to do. We'll get you some results. They may not be exactly what you want, but they'll be trending in the right direction, and eventually it'll take shape to what you're trying to see. So
yeah, we don't allow parents inside the gym like when kids are training for a host of reasons, but kids just, whenever a parent's in there, they're always watching out of the corner of their eye, making sure that their parent, isn't making weird faces at them or laughing at them or whatever. And my advice to parents has always been, your job in the beginning is to do research, ask questions, vet a couple different areas or people in your area that you're interested in training with, and ask those questions at that time, and make sure to, go in depth. I don't think a lot of parents do that. Like I've only had like 5 parents actually grill me on my background before they brought their kid in like 14 years. Right. So I think parents could do a better job at that. But once they've made their decision and they've said, okay, Dade is the guy to train my kid after our conversations, step back and let the professional do what they know how to do, and not micromanage, right? It'd be like if you paid someone to come clean your house and you just stood over them and watched them clean the entire time. And it's like, well, you might as well just clean it yourself, right? So
you were here the whole time.
Yeah.
So
I like that a lot. And for the athletes, you mentioned high performance takes less physical work and more efficient work, which we've spoke about a little bit, but do you have anything to expand on that?
No, I mean, I think just being simple. You don't have to go. You have to go hard, but you don't have to go as long as you think you do. Like it's give me one good rep, give me 2 good reps, and let's call it. Like it's not a do it again, do it again, do it again thing. It's not a I got to go do more. I got to go do this. It's no. Write down what you need to do, get it done, and live to see the next day.
Yeah. I think intense for athletes, like the ability to have as much intensity in your training is paramount if you want to make those adaptations to, movement in sport is intense. It's quick, it's fast, it's explosive, but it comes at a high cost. So if you want to be able to develop those qualities that you'll need on the field and that will pay off, number one, you can't do a ton of volume. It's got to be, short, explosive, quick. And then you have to give yourself ample time and resources to recover between efforts so you can keep high intensity efforts occurring weekly. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's really hard for people to grasp. And the older coaches, especially, I think they just came through a time, and parents where they were coached, like most of these parents were coached. And, that was like, for some reason, it was more just about like, how hard can you go? How many reps can you do? How tough are you? When really it didn't have anything to do with the toughness, didn't have anything to do with that. Right. It was just,
Yeah, the toughest kids don't always perform the best, and they're not the ones
yeah.
scoring the touchdowns and the goals. Honestly.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, man,
Cool.
it's got to keep it simple.
Awesome. Now to kind of cap it off, I always ask, what is something you've changed your mind about that is significant in your career?
I think just that and everything we talked about. I'm a coach's son, coach's grandson, coach's nephew. Like if it's all over, right, in the family, and they weren't ever hard or tough, but being that I had those relationships, I knew that I had to be that tough one. I had to be the one that did the extra stuff and went the extra mile, and it worked out for a long time until it didn't. When you get to college and everyone's athletic already, yeah, working hard is gonna get you so far as relationally, but performance wise, I mean, the laziest guys on our team were the best ones. It sucks, it sucks. So I think just my mindset is like, just don't do what I did, kind of
Yeah.
do what I did, but don't do what I did fully. Like you can take a back seat sometimes. You can recover. You can learn how to recover. You don't have to drain yourself. So yeah, less is better.
Love it. And then, is there a current rabbit hole that you're currently going down as a coach?
I don't know if this counts as a rabbit hole, but I'm like currently diving deep into all of the data points that I've taken over the last year and a half and writing their initial, their best. I'm making averages. And so a lot of things that I've done well recently, but I'm going further back and using that to kind of rekindle some clientele. So, I mean, that's kind of a rabbit hole. I just like numbers, man. I'm sitting there on the computer. That's what I was doing the 2 hours prior to talking to you. I was in here writing numbers down, putting them on Excel sheets, making some printouts, and ready to send some emails out. So, But I don't know. I don't really go. I don't want to say I don't really go down rabbit holes. I feel like I'm in just one hole.
Yeah.
It's kind of got different tunnels. So.
Yeah, I like that. The data side is obviously very powerful, and we all kind of believe in it in terms of the coaches in our network. But unless you take that data and you use it, or you create something that's going to garner some benefit out of it, then again, you're just kind of wasting your time. So I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Diving into that.
It'll definitely help. Definitely help the business side of things because I've never been that person.
Yeah.
Never been the business person. So I mean, joining Speed Labs, everyone's kind of been helping with learning things, and I think learning how to use the numbers that I'm so passionate about is going to help a lot. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, that's the best part about the university rating is that network. And like we always say, talk is cheap and results speak. So when you can show those results and you can have the numbers and you can relay that to parents and clients and let them see that beyond just like, they go to a basketball game and they're like, wow, my kid's faster, but being able to say, yeah, your kid's this much better at this, and this. And that's why you see that on the court. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just connecting the dots for the parents to get from A to B to C, just like we're trying to teach the athletes how to do this, and this. It's like teaching parents and coaches how to look for the right thing when it comes to the physical development side and athletic performance side that falls into our realm. Right.
Yeah. I always tell the parents like, hey, I've got all these things so that I can paint the picture for you. I'm not the one. I put the plans in place. They carry them out. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But having all this lets me paint the picture so we know what direction we're headed in. And that's a lot of things. Like in Louisiana, I don't want to say Louisiana, but like in our area, we don't have a whole lot of that, with the numbers. Or I feel like we have a lot of people that do the wrong numbers. I don't want to say right or wrong, but there's more or less better numbers that we can be tracking.
Love it. Awesome. So if people are listening to this, they're like, man, I want to see a little bit more about what Dade's about. Where can they find you and see what you're doing?
They can find me on Instagram at coach_Dade, I think, or they can follow the business page, which is D Advanced Performance. I'm pretty much just on Instagram. Lately, haven't been super active. I'm just kind of on there looking and kind of that's it. I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. So if you're in Lafayette, and you're looking to get faster, more explosive, come find me.
Dade.
Come find me.
Sweet.
Come
Okay,
find me.
man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah,
I
man. Thanks
appreciate
for
you
having me.
having you on the show, and I think that we'll get some value for our listeners and from the Louisiana perspective on things. So I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.